Now imagine this, you have about 80 grand to spend on a sports car and you specifically want a German car. You want a two-door sports car coupe. So which one do you choose? Well, you do have actually three great options. In this video, we're going to focus on two of them. We have the BMW M4, we have the brand new Mercedes-AMG 53 CLE, great looking car, and you also have the Audi RS5, which is a little bit dated now. So what we're going to do in this video is have a look at the BMW M4, which they updated for 2025, and the new BMW Mercedes CLE 53. And I'm going to let you know which one I would buy based mainly on the design. So let's start here by looking. We're going to compare the two cars from front, side, and rear, the interior obviously. But first of all, let's have a look at what these cars are all about. So starting with the Mercedes here, we have a 2024 Mercedes-AMG CLE 53, the coupe made swole. The more transformative elements are the swollen front and rear fenders, which I think this is what I love about AMG. They really nail their, visual changes from a normal CLE or normal cars to their AMG models. You have a wider track by 2.3 inches in the front and 3 in the back. And you know what this means, right? It's going to give it this planted sumo squat that we want in the rear end compared to the regular CLE. The AMG specific front fenders allows the CLE 53's front wheels to also move forward 0.4 inches. And I don't think I've ever heard this before. The AMG version of a car, of a normal Mercedes, actually has a longer wheelbase than the base model. I don't think I've ever heard that before. Optional AMG Performance Studio package adds a rear diffuser, a larger rear spoiler, and you get some tweaks to the front fascia as well. The CLE doesn't follow the lead of the Mercedes-AMG C63 sedan, which employs a highly complex, highly controversial turbocharged 4-cylinder plug-in hybrid train. Glad that they stuck with a turbocharged 3-liter inline-6 here. You also have the same 48-volt hybrid system. The power comes out to 443 horsepower and 413 pounds of torque. And I do know that that is a little bit lower than the base BMW M4. We're going to have a look at those numbers in a minute. But power is not everything. Today, when we have EVs going 0 to 60 in, 1.9 seconds, power is just not, for me at least, it's not a high of a priority as it used to be back in the day. Then you have the rival BMW M4, which this is a huge deal, offers a manual transmission. If you want a manual for your M4, you can get that in the base M4s. AMG has no interest in manuals, and there isn't one here. Shifting is done by the AMG modified 9-speed automatic. You have all-wheel drive as standard 4MATIC. Rear biased system can decouple the front axle and send 100% of the power to the rear wheels. That is great, specifically when we have this nice stance in the rear end. The AMG driver's package, available in other markets, raises the speed limiter from 155 miles per hour to 168 miles per hour. Not a huge difference there in speed limit, and this won't be available in the US, but if it was like 155 limiter and then the top speed, the true top speed were about 190, then that would be something that I would want to see here in the US as well. So 4.2 seconds 0 to 60 time and 4 seconds with race starts. Now that Mercedes is always conservative with their numbers, and this is probably going to be a lot quicker than that. So in the interior here, you have an AMG specific steering wheel, beautiful. I love Mercedes steering wheel, and these little dials here for the suspension, for example, the exhaust setting, the sport mode, the drive modes here. It just looks fantastic. Not just the physical appearance of them, but the internal little display with these gradient colors in there. It's a beautiful design. You have a 12.3-inch instruments cluster or gauge cluster and an 11.9-inch center touchscreen, which is still has this GLC angle to it, which I want to keep straight. Now the base price for the CLE 53 comes out at about $80,000, which is pretty much exactly the same base price that you get for that you pay for an M4. So looking at the M4 here before jumping into Photoshop, 2025 BMW M4 looks slightly sharper and makes even more power. It gets a boost to 523 horsepower, and you get the CSL taillights. So these diodes, these small little, very thin LEDs in the taillights. I think it looks very cool. It now starts at $80,095, or $95 more than the CLE 53. They're very competitive. They're very comparable, these two cars. Twin turbo 3-liter inline 6. Same thing there, as you have a 3-liter inline 6 in the Mercedes as well. Entry-level car is now has 473 horsepower directed to the rear axle through a 6-speed manual gearbox, and the competition having 503, so those numbers are still the same as before, and an 8-speed automatic. But now you also have the top-of-the-line all-wheel drive competition X-Drive. That is the one that gets the power boost up to 523 horsepower. 0 to 60 is done in 3.4 seconds for the top-of-the-line and 3.6 seconds for the convertible. Back in 2022, we blasted it through the benchmark of a very impressive 2.8 seconds. This is a seriously quick car. And this is also why I think the Mercedes is going to be a lot faster than like 4.2 seconds that they mentioned. You also have it limited here at 155 miles per hour for this top speed as standard, but you can pay an extra increase to have that be 174 miles per hour for the convertible and 180 for the coupe. Every M3 now comes with the incorporated LED running lights and turn signals. And it will have, as I said, the cool taillights from the M4 CSL. The roof will also be finished in gloss black to contrast the body color. I do think that's a cool idea. I like cars when they have a black roof, specifically when it's, of course, carbon fiber. The combination of a 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster and a 14.9-inch central touchscreen continue on. Never been a fan of this integration. It doesn't bother me as much when I'm driving the car, but when I'm fiddling around with the infotainment screen, it's just not intuitive enough for me. You have a heated steering wheel. Everything can be controlled by voice commands, obviously. Now you do get a price bump as well, about $1,000 more than last year, and deliveries will begin in March of this year, so it's already started the deliveries of this. With that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and have a look at both of these cars. Fantastic cars by the Germans. Again, I mean, if you want a relatively small two-door coupe sports car, Germany always seems to be on point with these type of cars. So up top, we do have the new CLE 53 in this optional matte black or satin black color, which is probably not something I would pick for my CLE. I feel like that's a little bit too 2005-ish for me, but it still looks very cool. We have the frowning grille here, which is typical for Mercedes today. We have the Panamericana grille with the slots going vertical like this. I think it looks great because they then continue in the lower section here as well, looking very clean. I love these intakes that we have on the side for Mercedes-AMG models these days. It has this organic, beautiful feel to it. I also like the headlights of this car. Overall, I do think this is just a stunning looking front end, and the overall proportions of the CLE 53. And we're also going to get a CLE 63 eventually, and that is going to be just a beast of a machine. Beautiful front end for the CLE. Now looking at the new M4 down here, the 2025 model year, what's new here is very subtle. We do have some new graphics in the hood, for example, very cool. Not sure if I'm personally a fan of these graphics. I think they look a little static, but the rest of the car actually feels static. The design overall, to me, feels like a much more static design than the previous M4, which has this organic, beautiful, flowing design in the front end. Here we have more of an industrial look with these kidneys that we talked so much about, and this corner that I'm not a fan of. I made a redesign just curving this and making it go like this in my in-person review of the M4 convertible on the Sketch Monkey channel. And then we have these new LEDs that looks... I actually prefer these to the old ones because the reason being is these look way more dynamic. We have a thick piece up top and creates a bit more of a dynamic feel than what we used to have in the pre-facelift, where they just had this outline for the LED, something like this, with the same thickness going all around it. So those are basically the changes for the M4 in a front view. Now looking at the side here, and what strikes me the most when I look at these two cars, just going to be the wheels. I love both of these wheel designs. I don't believe that the Mercedes has a staggered setup. I do believe these are probably 19s or 20s all around, but you can see that the BMW, you have 20s in the rear, 19s in the front, and I'm not a fan of when BMW does that because, as I said before, it looks a little Hot Wheelish to me. I'd rather have just 20s all around, like I have on the i4 M50 that I'm reviewing right now, that's coming up on the Sketch Monkey channel. That has 20s all around, but the M4 sticks with 19s in the front and 20s in the back. Look at the Mercedes here, just how clean and elegant this line is. And the overall proportions of this reminds me of the previous C63 AMG, the coupe version, which had some of the best looking proportions for a coupe, in my opinion. It just looks stunning, and this definitely feels more like the C-Class than the E-Class coupe, the previous generation, because as you know, the CLE combines both of those models into one model, and I feel like they had to make a choice. Are we going to go with the C-Class styling or angle it more to the E-Class? And I'm really glad that they kept it more like the C-Class coupe from the previous generation, because that, again, was a beautiful looking car. Beautiful greenhouse here as well, very low. It sits very low, this greenhouse. You can see the proportions between the glass and the bodywork. It's almost like it's like 75% of the height here, and then you have 25% of the height here, which makes it look very beefy and planted. I love that about this design. Not a huge fan of this trim piece that we have going here. It feels a little lonely there, and I'm not sure if I want to have it be carbon fiber like this. I would much rather just have it be just a regular cut in the body and not have this separate trim piece here. Apologies for the noise outside, they're just taking out the trash at the moment. Looking down low for the BMW M4, we do have this stunning color. I'm not sure if this is white or maybe like egg style, egg white for this design. We have the same type of feeling for the shoulder line here. Look at this. We have this shoulder here, and then we have a come back at the lower section, and then comes back up top in line with the shoulder line that we have over the front axle. Very interesting treatment for the design. We also have a very, very sporty roof line in this case, dipping down like this. But it feels like maybe the BMW feels a little bit more stretched out than the Mercedes. And for the side view, I do believe I prefer the Mercedes in this case. But the wheels for both of these cars look beautiful. Beautiful wheels. I have always been a fan of Mercedes wheels specifically. And these, when you see these roll with this inner rim here, it looks like it has a dual rim. It looks great when you see it in motion, these wheels. So last but not least, before I jump into the interior, let's have a look at the rear end here. And here you can see just both of these cars just look so planted, and I love, again, that Mercedes just widened this by, what did it say, like 3 inches in the rear for the AMG model, and that totally transforms the appearance and the stance for this car. It's a stunning looking design, both in the proportions and the graphics, and I also like these taillights, even though I wasn't a huge fan of them in the EQ series. Here they look a little bit more defined, even though it's very organic still. Again, these pieces, these separate trim pieces, not a fan of this. I want to delete this and just have it be, you know, a cut in the body, like I said, in the side view here. Very organic in the lower section for the diffuser as well, with the quad tailpipes here. The 63 is probably going to get these more static looking tailpipes as normal for the 63. And up top we do have this AMG lip spoiler up top, also adding some small details like that, just adds up for this design. And have a look at how beefy the rear tires are. This, in combination with these wider fenders that we have here, just creates this sumo squat stance that I want to see in AMG models, specifically coupes like this. Now, looking at the BMW M4, this could very well in 2024 have been the design of a CSL, because we do have these diode taillights now. These are the ones I talked about, these very thin taillights. It looks very cool, and it looks like they're gonna put this on the normal, the M440 Grand Coupe now as well. I do think that is a mistake, because I want to have these be specific for the proper M models and not just put them onto every single model, because there's such special internal pieces of the LEDs that I want to have them be on special vehicles as well. And this is by far my favorite view of the M4, this 3/4 rear view. It looks proper, it looks beautiful. The only thing I would change here is to just have one shoulder line that goes from one end of the car all the way into the front end, instead of having it be cut and then have this little line down here in the bodywork, but I talked about that before. Now, last but not least, let's have a look at the interiors here. Now, to me, when I look at both of these interiors, none of these are my optimal setup for what I want to see in an interior. Both of these have the screens for the gauge cluster, so just a screen on the dash here, and we also have still this angle for the CLE. It's angled this way just a little bit. I do believe it's 6 degrees, similar to what we have on other Mercedes models. They didn't put it on the AMG GT, which is interesting. The AMG GT has a static. It looks centered in that one, and that's exactly what I want to have here as well. But then we have the steering wheel, AMG specific. Look at how fat this is with the Alcantara going around it on the sides. Beautiful materials here, and these dials that we talked about earlier, just beautifully done, and also a lot of carbon fiber in the interior for the CLE 53. Just looking fantastic. I also like the design of these vents, Mercedes specific vents that feel quality. The interior overall just oozes this build quality when I look at it whenever I sit in a new Mercedes. Now looking at the BMW M4 here, we have the 14.9-inch infotainment screen right there and the 12.3-inch gauge cluster. It's typical iDrive 8 system that we've seen in many BMWs. The only thing I would change here, we still kind of have that in the Mercedes as well, is to have these be physical buttons. Climate control settings in the BMW, I don't think it works as well as it does in the Mercedes. It's a lot bigger, the graphics for these type of settings in the Mercedes than we have in the BMW. And I just want to have these buttons, move them down here, and just place some sort of array of buttons here and toggles for the climate control settings. That would solve so many headaches for me when it comes to the new BMW's interiors. But looking at the steering wheel, still the fat, flat bottom M steering wheel, and the biggest benefit here for the M4 is that we can still get it with a manual transmission, which to me is huge for a 2025 model year. So which one of these would I personally buy? For me, it's gonna come down to exterior styling and also a little bit interior, I would say, and not at all about the power numbers these days. So I would personally go with the new CLE 53 AMG. I think it's an overall beautiful, gorgeous design, and I do think Mercedes these days are just nailing their exterior design when it comes to the internal combustion engine versions. The EQ series, never really been a fan of, but this CLE looks fantastic, and I cannot wait to see the changes that they're gonna make when the CLE 63 comes out.